Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. This is the US Open golf preview coming to you this weekend from Torrey Pines from the South Course. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm joined by two expert guests, expert tipsters, Oddschecker's very own Niall Lyons and Sporting Life's Ben Coley. This podcast and video is sponsored by Sky Bet, who are paying 11 places at the US Open this weekend. No bookmaker on the Oddschecker grids are paying more places. It's a fifth the odds. T's and C's do apply. 18 plus only, and you can go to begambleaware.org for all info around responsible gambling. But yeah, a fifth the 11, Niall. You know, when you're being given places like that, you know, it's pretty appealing to go after a fair few selections, and that's exactly what you've done with your staking plan this weekend.
Yeah, it's competitive really across the board. So there's never been a better time to be a golf punter, to be fair. And you're churning out selections, sometimes 6 or 7 selections some weeks, but you know, what can you do when there's plenty place terms out there? There's plenty of room for plenty of selections. So yeah, it's never better, and hopefully we'll make a profit this week. Yeah,
fingers crossed. That offer lasts from now until the first board is struck. So you've got a bit of time as soon as don't be sleeping on it, because as soon as the golf starts on Thursday, those 11 place terms will be cut to something a bit shorter. But Ben, speaking to the man in form at the moment, you know, an 150 to 1 winner last weekend. You're for 400 points up for the season so far. I mean, what's the trick?
Bet on rubbish tournaments, I think is probably the secret. No, it's like, I think Niall and I are probably in the same boat. We feel like, I certainly feel like I need to get a major winner soon. But then actually, it's kind of a nice little insight into how players must feel and how much pressure there is to perform on one of 4 events per year, because I think my last major winner was Shane Lowry at Port Rush. Well, it's only 5 or 6 tournaments ago in major speak. But you feel, you know, it feels a lot. It obviously is almost 2 years. So I'm fairly desperate to get one over the line in one of these. But, you know, I'm certainly not complaining if the smaller events take care of it and take the pressure off, which Jonathan Caldwell somehow certainly did on Sunday.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Before we get into talking through your guys' selections, because I'm looking forward to speaking to both of you, because you're every time, you know, not just for majors, but all tournaments, your columns are so important to read, I think, for any punter, because not only do you give your tips, but also just a bit of context around the course and around what we're going to be looking for. And it's interesting because you both kind of agree with what tests the course is going to provide, but maybe then go down different lines for your selections themselves. But so before we get into the picks, which we will do in a second, Niall, just kind of talk us through what you think the South Course will look like this week, how you think it's going to play, who you think it's going to suit, and how much can we kind of glean from the form that we see over there, of course, with the North Course being thrown in as well during the PGA Tour season.
Yeah, well, it's a big debate this week about whether, you know, you lean too heavy on that Torrey Pines form. And for me, it's certainly no negative to have good form around there. And if you don't have the form, then, you know, you don't need to glean too much importance from it. But at the same time, I think form around there is a huge positive. I don't know how it couldn't be, no matter what time of year it's at, whether it's earlier on in the year or later on in the year, like it has been a number of years ago. The course is going to play obviously very long, one of the longest. Once again, the rough will be extremely penal, I think. We'll get into it, obviously, when we chat about the event and the players in particular, but it could be a lot more difficult, I think, than some previous US Opens with that thick rough that, you know, really has suited the Bombers. And even though it's a long course, obviously, the closer you get to the greens in recent years, the easier it's been for those guys to take an advantage. And I just don't think it might play out that way this week. I think it might be a shade more nuanced than usual, but it's going to be very tough. I think the test even around the greens is tougher than what some of those courses in previous years have been, like Bethpage Black. So yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I'm really looking forward to it this week.
Yeah, I am very excited as well. And of course, we have memories of 2008 when Tiger Woods basically won on one leg. But what's often kind of forgotten about is that the winning score there was representative of a course that is going to provide a pretty stern test, Ben. I mean, can we expect it to be as difficult this weekend?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Winning scores are difficult to to get your head around, there's always a risk, that someone runs away with it. And if you're ever betting on winning score, if you bet, say, 10 under or worse at Congressional when Rory won, you've been done because one player was exceptional and the rest of the field backed up what you thought. So that's obviously the caveat with any winning score prediction. But I think anything around level par, I wouldn't say no to that. I really don't think it'll be a lot lower. We saw, obviously, again, winged foot, good example. Bryson was way ahead. What was he, 6 under in the end? But everybody else, I think you got a place with about 6 over. So it should be really tough. And, it'll be interesting to see what the USGA do, because there's always talk about how they set things up. There will always be a variety of players in the top 20. We're not going to get the biggest 20 hitters fill the top 20 places, obviously. But if you look at the bottom line of who's won the US Open from 2016 to 2020, you've had Brooks Koepka twice, Dustin Johnson once, Bryson DeChambeau and Gary Woodland. I mean, they're 5 of the biggest hitters in the sport. And the courses were set up to favour them. And DJ, of course, probably should have won it in 2015 as well at Chambers Bay. So you have to go back to 2014, really, for the last time where it wasn't a hugely big hitter heavy tournament. And the secret there, it was firm, fast and no rough at Pinehurst. And it amazes me that the USGA don't recognise the success of that tournament and go down that route more. Now, they have tried with Erin Hills, for example, and obviously these venues are selected some years in advance. So it may just take a little while for that. It's like the vaccine effect. It takes a couple of weeks. I had to get a COVID line in somewhere. So yeah, it may be that they try and change their thinking going forward. But for the time being, we've got a long course and thick rough. And when you put those things together, generally speaking, the bigger hitters thrive. And I'm hopeful that'll be the case.
Well, you've kind of summed up there the strategy you've chosen when looking for your player profile. But no, you're not so sure that it's going to be dominated by those kind of big hitters in this event.
Yeah, well, the USGA have talked about kind of just curtailing that kind of game. It's one I really don't think they like what Bryson did last year at Winged Foot. The bomb and gouge tactics, they've come out and said it, that they want to try and stop that game. They've built, obviously, Reece Jones has tweaked a few things at this course. He's added a couple of fairway bunkers, maybe towards the landing spots of the likes of DeChambeau and Koepka. And behind the 9th green, they've added a shaved runoff area behind the green, where if you're going for the green in 2, you'll need to be extremely accurate lengthwise in order not to be in trouble around the green. So there's little stories of trying to get to those guys. And as I say, I really don't think what happened at Winged Foot last year. And the fact that they're coming out and saying that, basically, if anyone's gonna get to them, it'll be the USGA. And the way they set up the courses, it's hard to imagine at the end of the day, 7,800 yard golf course with high rough not being dominated by these bombers. And to be fair, I've backed a couple. I think if any year there'll be a slight difference in the way it pans out from the likes of Winged Foot and Bethpage, it could be this year at Torrey Pines.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we'll get into your selections now. Before we do so, just going to point the listener or viewer in the direction of the oddschecker app. Do download the app now. It's where you get the very best prices, best place terms, as well as are being offered by Sky Bet for this event. Bookie offers free bets and some of the very best tipsters in the game. Not all of them, because we have Ben, of course, on Sporting Life. But Niall, you'll find his tips up on the oddschecker app every single weekend, and absolute must-have for anybody listening or watching this who enjoys their punting on golf or other sports. Do download the app. The way we're going to do this, normally we go through the favourites and then go on to the selections, but we're going to mix it up this time and go through the selections first and then talk through those at the top of the market that we haven't discussed before moving on to a couple of the sub-markets and maybe a couple of players just to swerve we haven't discussed yet. I'll run through the prices now. Jon Rahm is 10-1 favourite ahead of Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau, all at 18-1. Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele and Jordan Spieth, all 20-1. Colin Morikawa 25s alongside Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, Victor Hovland and Patrick Cantley 28-1, 30-1 bar. But we're going to start with a man right at the top of the list. Niall, your headline pick is the favourite to win the US Open and win his maiden major tournament trophy, Jon Rahm.
I absolutely love his chances, and it's obvious at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I'm backing a favourite in a major, and to be fair, he's a strong favourite. But I actually think that the runaway victory that was snatched from him at the Memorial has actually added a couple of points to his price. You know, it probably was going to be 7, 8, 9 shots victory, and the way he was playing, it could have been even more. So I think that would have resulted in a slightly shorter price actually than what he currently is. He's got the Torrey Pines form. Of course, he's finished first and third there, but I think he's just reached another level lately. And you know, there's very few bad rounds in 2021 so far. There's only a handful. Looking at the data golf statistics over the weekend, I couldn't believe the strokes gained data from those couple of rounds at the Memorial. 7.4 strokes gained in round 2 and 9.9 strokes gained in round 3. That's true stroke gained. It's 2 true stroke gained, absolutely, with data golf. And the third round at the Memorial was his best ever round in the PGA Tour. That's like absolutely incredible golf that he's playing. And, you know, obviously he comes to Torrey Pines where he absolutely loves. He's got the Poana form. He's got the West Coast form. I actually think that the 11-1 that I posted yesterday is actually very fair, regardless of him being, you know, 7 or 8 points shorter than really anyone else in the field. He just holds all the aces, and there's a few negatives surrounding a couple of others around the top of the market. And I actually think the 11-1's a bit of value at the end of the day. I'm quite confident on this one that he's going to be right there. And obviously he's a major champion in the waiting, and he fits the bill of everything we always talk about in these major podcasts. So yeah, I'll be surprised if he doesn't give it a right good go. And just those couple of rounds at the Memorial, statistically, just completely stand out against the rest of the field.
Yeah, you've gone for 5 points win. As you say, he was 11s yesterday. Then the Niall Lyons effect has clipped him in a little bit. Still 9-1 around if you want the 11 places with Sky Bet. I mean, there'll be a couple of people listening, Niall, who can't have him. So I better try and play devil's advocate for their sake. And I guess a couple of the arguments will be, well, firstly, you know, you always talk about how important it is to have players who are challenging for major tournaments going into majors. And a kind of quick look at his major tournament form recently would suggest that he has, with a tied 8 and a tied 5th in the Masters and the PGA Championship. Although it doesn't really tell the whole story, because both days on Sundays he made late moves out of contention into a top 10 finish. So does that concern you, that we haven't really seen him in the thick of things on a Sunday before? And my second question, sorry to do the whole journalist during the Downing Street briefings by asking you 2 questions at once. but my second question is the temperament thing. You know, that's always been the question about Rahm, is does he have the mindset to put his bad holes behind him? And it's hard to really think of a course worse than the South Course at Torrey Pines, where things can go wrong very quickly, where he's going to have to keep his head screwed on and not react too poorly to, you know, maybe making a double here or there, because it is so penal.
Well, I'll start with the second question first and then try and remember the first question.
Or you can ignore it like the Prime Minister.
Funnily enough, Torrey Pines was one of them moments where I thought his mentality kind of changed. If you remember, in a couple of years ago when Mark Leishman won, I think it was Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy playing together in the final group, the final day, and they both had a terrible start, Rahm in particular, and he rallied that day to almost win the event. He was just done in the end. But that was one of those moments where he was really up against it and showed a fair bit of character to come back. And I think there's more and more of that in his game. And in particular, when it comes to betting Jon Rahm, I tend to look at him actually in running when he's had a poor start. I think he's really good at coming from behind. A bad start on a few bogeys or double bogeys wouldn't particularly worry me around the South Course. I think he knows that he's strong favourite for this event, and I think his confidence will be extremely high. As I say, there's just not many negatives surrounding him. I think those back end top 10s and major championships are a sign of his character these days, to be honest. I think we just need a good start. At the end of the day, you kind of look to Rory McIlroy, who's similar, posting back end top 10 majors, top 10 finishes in majors quite regularly after poor starts. So Rahm is not quite at that standard yet where he's that poor at the beginning, but at the same time, yeah, he's kind of somewhat unproven on the back nine of a major championship yet. But if there's ever anywhere where he can do it, it's going to be Torrey Pines.
Interesting stuff. And anything on the contention issue, or should we just move on?
No, I don't think so. Just obviously he's won everything in the game bar a major, so I don't think you can look into it that much. Obviously, when we see him down the back nine of a major championship, it's going to we'll see what he's made of. But I think we know what he's made of at the end of the day. Like he was winning the Memorial by 6 or 7 shots there when he had to withdraw.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we need much more evidence that he can win a major championship.
Yeah, and I guess it's pretty hard to believe that it's not going to come pretty soon where we're going to see Jon Rahm right in the thick of things on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening. Then on to your headline pick, 4 points each way on one of those at the top of the market as well. Bryson DeChambeau, he's 18-1 with a few firms as it stands at the moment. And I guess, given what you were saying earlier about power off the tee, this one makes a bit of sense. But also reading your column, it's also to do with his ability, I guess, over other players in what's going to be some pretty heavy rough if you do miss the fairway.
You know, it will depend a lot on how this tournament plays out and the way the course is set up. But I think when we saw at Winged Foot that he is hugely advantaged by those conditions. Fairways that are hard to hit, rough that's really thick. And that's always been the formula at Torrey Pines one way or another. I think if you dig down into it, there's some talk that the Kikuyu, which is in a strain of grass, which is in this rough, is probably a little bit less predictable, and you can get good lies and bad lies, whereas at Winged Foot it's just a heavy lie for everybody, and that adds an element of random. But the bottom line for me is there's nobody in the sport who is better equipped to get the ball out of that rough, and that's a huge advantage. And Rory McIlroy talked about it. It's not just his strength, it's his angle of attack, it's the length, the fact that the shafts on his wedges are considerably longer than Rory McIlroy's are, so you get more club head speed. And all those things were in evidence at Winged Foot, where all of a sudden he was one of the best iron players in the field. In fact, I believe he led the field in strokes gained approach, which can be his weakness. I think if you put every player in the fairway from 150 yards out, I'd say of the elite golfers in the world, Bryson DeChambeau is the worst. But when you put them all in the rough, he might be the best. And Torrey Pines is always been notorious for having hard to hit fairways. They're hard to hit when it's soft in January. It's going to be really firm down the fairway, so they're going to be very, very difficult to hit. So obviously you can't spray it everywhere and get away with it, but he's driving the ball well. You know, his game looks in decent shape, and it's that big step forward which I think we could see for conditions which makes the difference. And you know, price wise, 12-1 anti-post, 14s at best at Christmas with 6 places. We can have 18-1 with 9 or 10 places he's won since, which is, you know, it would be a mark against Rahm. I mean, obviously there's a big caveat there. Rahm, in my eyes, Rahm has won since, because there's no way he wouldn't have won that tournament. But even against like players like DJ, okay, won in Saudi Arabia, but that's a big drop in grade. And I think we could look at the form of most of the world's best players and find little holes in it. And I think probably DeChambeau deserves a little bit more respect. And I think the reason his price is being held up is his course form is poor. I value course form very heavily, which you'll see with my other selections. But we're talking about a player who's completely transformed. Bryson DeChambeau in 2018, 2017 versus today is a different golfer. You might as well be talking about, you know, Kenny Perry or someone. It's just completely irrelevant. And if he can adapt to this test, and he's in California, his home state, he's a brilliant putter on Poa, even if he'll tell you he doesn't like it that much, but his stats say otherwise. And again, I think the 2 best form guides to this are probably the last 2 majors away from the Masters and Kiawah Island. So the 2020 PGA and the 2020 US Open. He was first in one and I think 4th in the other. So I like him a lot. I think he's got as good a chance as anybody.
You mentioned in your preview that one negative is possibly the rivalry, let's say, with Brooks Koepka. Going into this, the biggest stage, and you know, as a cynic myself, you've got to wonder the timing of all this as we start to hear about the incentivization around golfers and their kind of social media platform and the way that both golfers have kind of used their social media to stoke the fire as well. How much of a concern is that maybe, you know, the golf might not be at the forefront of his mind, either for genuine reasons of rivalry or possibly actually commercial ones?
I don't know. It's one of those things that's really hard to quantify, and you have to have it in the back of your mind. And it'd be the same with Rahm. Like, how do you quantify? How do you value like what happened at Memorial? I think you could easily argue that is an actual plus. As Niall said, he could easily have gone and won 7, 8, 9 shots and been shorter. And you could argue it makes no difference. I think on the other hand, you could say, well, imagine playing good golf, but not great golf for 9 months. Then you finally play great golf and you don't get a trophy. That's the best golf of his life. He gained 20 strokes on the field in 3 rounds. That's ridiculous. And you don't get a trophy. How does that affect a player? We don't know. And we might not even find out, because it might have nothing to do with how he performs this week. But with Bryson and Brooks, it's a bit of a worry. I don't think the USGA will put them together. He is on home soil. I think if we were in New York, with a full crowd, a beard up New York crowd, be a big worry. You'd have people getting thrown out left, right and centre, and it would be a distraction. In San Diego, maybe dare I say, a little bit better mannered and less raucous, and maybe there are a few more Bryson fans in there. It's not enough of a worry to put me off, and also I think there's a danger that we underestimate DeChambeau from a mental perspective. He's done a lot of things over the last 5 years which have had people questioning him and his team and his swing and his whole ethos and how you play the sport. And ultimately, for all I would be a critic of the man at times, he if nothing else, he finds the answers. Whatever the problem has been, he was a terrible putter. He worked it out. He's become a very, very good putter. He wasn't long enough, so he went and got longer. He wasn't a very good iron player, so he's worked on that and found improvements there. He will work everything out, and he'll work out how to perform with this extra focus on him. Whether it's in time for this week, we'll find out. But no, it wasn't a massive concern.
Niall, your second selection, I mean, we've seen quite a few times in the past 6 months, I was going to say 12 months, but in recent times, quality players going through a little sticky patch of form and drifting to absolutely bonkers prices. Is it fair to say your second selection fits that mold?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I've learned a fair bit off Ben, to be fair, over the last couple of years in terms of this kind of thing, and obviously he's nailed quite a few. But you think of Koepka winning with 33s, DJ winning with 33s, McIlroy winning at his beloved Quail Hollow at 20s or whatever he was. Justin Thomas drifting to 25s is just too much. It's one of those things, I think, towards the top of the market, long term, I think you have to try and let the opportunities come to you. And this 25 to 1 about Justin Thomas is just one of those opportunities that I'm delighted to take. And whether he plays, whether he wins or he misses a cut, I'm not going to be too bothered at the end of the week, to be fair. I think the 25 to 1 is just well worth taking. I would prefer him obviously to have better form, but that's the reason why he's out to 25 to 1. He didn't play well in the PGA, but at the end of the day, the KO Island test was one of those made for open specialists and especially old timers as well. And Justin Thomas is experienced enough, to be fair, but he doesn't quite have that open pedigree as the rest, as some of the top golfers anyway. His 2 performances since have been average also, but one of them at the Memorial was a really poor putting performance, and Justin Thomas can throw them in, and at the same time then the next week he can go out and absolutely put the lights out, so that's the kind of risk you're taking with Justin Thomas. But nevertheless, I consider proximity stats quite important this week. I think there's plenty of guys going to be hitting the rough, and I think I disagree with Ben just slightly that I think it's going to be the typical DeChambeau leg where you get hit, you bomb and gouge it. I think DeChambeau will be left plenty of 50 to 100 yard shots in the greens to try and save par. And I think, Thomas comes into his own whenever, anything up to 200 yards, I suppose. Thomas is great with approach and proximity. So I would prefer him to have a slightly better record on the West Coast and on Poana greens. But at the same time, he's world number 2, and I'm just delighted to take a 25 to 1. I don't care how he plays during the week, and I'm just chuffed to get 25 to 1 about Justin Thomas on a major.
2.5 points each way. Justin Thomas at 25 to 1 there for Niall. Let's put your second and third picks together, otherwise we're going to be here all day, Ben. Victor Hovland and Tony Finau, 2 men looking for their first major victories.
Yeah, and a great example of the quandary that is presented in some ways by the 10 and 11 places we can have. There's no way either player is entitled to be considered an equal likely winner as Justin Thomas. They're just not. However, I would probably say that both of them actually are more likely to place. I think JT might be a bit of a boom or bust selection, as Niall has spoken about, and he was right on towards the top of my shortlist as well, because he can definitely bounce back, probably more so than most of the world's best players. Actually, is prone to those swings in form. But look, Hovland, I felt was a little bit short for the USPGA because it was the narrative that Paspalum greens were all of a sudden, he must therefore be backed, when really that was what we were saying, was that he played well in Puerto Rico and Mexico in generally weak fields. I think it's far more relevant that he's been second at Torrey Pines, as he was at the start of this year. Speaking about those massive strokes gained rounds of Rahm's at Memorial, Hovland's second round 65, he gained almost 10 strokes on the field. It was an absurd round in difficult conditions, foul weather. And it speaks to his qualities. He's a brilliant ball striker when he's on. And he generally has been for most of the year. He's top 6 finishes in half of his starts in stroke play tournaments this year. He's done everything but win. The negatives, he's not really contended for a major. He had a look at the leaderboard at Kiel Island and didn't kick on. He hasn't won a good event. He's not won a playoff event or a high field strength event, really, and they are concerns. But his record in California, Poana Greens, he won the US Amateur at Pebble Beach. He was also 12th in this at Pebble Beach. I think he's got so much in his favour, more so than he did in the PGA, and it was only a bad putter that kept him from the first page of the leaderboard, if you like, at the Memorial. So I do like him. Finau's as obvious as you're going to see this week, right? He's not finished outside the top 25 at Torrey Pines. He's been there 7 times. I remember reading an article 7 years ago when he came onto the PGA Tour, and it was about how Torrey Pines is going to be a great fit for him. Whoever wrote it was absolutely spot on, because he's been banged there every year in 7. Loves the South Course. His long fade off the tee is perfect. If you look at his recent form, he's placed in both majors. Same things you said about Rahm play. He's not really looked like winning either of them this time, but he has obviously had a look at winning majors. He's played in a couple of final groups. He's had a chance to win several. The negative is obvious. He doesn't win, right? Everyone will tell you that. But does that continue? I don't know. And what I do know is he's been unlucky, as well as lacking a bit of ruthlessness. And I think, he was inches from winning at Riviera, which is a good form guide, I suspect. And if Max Homer's shot to the 10th hole in the playoff had gone behind the tree instead of next to it, Finau wins, and that's just bad luck, isn't it? What can you do about that? So
I was on, Ben, so you don't have to worry about that.
Sorry about that. Right. But yeah, to sum up, in any other event, when you get in 6 or 7 places, do you want to be taking 25 to 1 Finau? Can you argue that he deserves to be the same price as Patrick Cantley, a winner last time, or Justin Thomas, a winner of loads of events? No. When you get 11 places, I do think it should shift how you approach things and just add a little bit more leeway there. And where Finau is concerned, I think he's as likely as anyone in the tournament, just about, maybe bar Rahm, to play well. And if he plays well, we'll take our chances on Sunday. Yeah,
surely would be 2 very popular winners. Certainly Tony Finau. I would be over the moon if he can get over the line this weekend, both from a personal perspective and also a financial one too. Niall, couple let's group together now for you. 1 point each way, Adam Scott, and 1 point each way, Louis Oosthuizen.
Adam Scott's obviously a risky one, but I think the 80 to 1's quite decent. I backed him at the start of the year in Hawaii. I think Ben might have been on in Hawaii as well, actually. His approach play was absolutely off the charts, but he was, even for Adam Scott standards, he was doing ridiculous things on the greens and around the greens, so he just couldn't contend. But his approach play was unbelievable at the start of the year. His form kind of tailed off since then. He played okay at the Honda. He was 13th there, but again, it was a poor putting performance. So he actually could have finished much higher. But again, his long game was in good nick. And then last time at the Memorial, there were very good signs. All parts of his game were in working order. He's good experience around here at Torrey Pines. He finished 26th in the 2008 US Open renewal. So he has experience of, maybe the difficulty which might play out here. He was top 10 at Bethpage and at Pebble Beach. So it ticks the Poana box and the West Coast box. And, I just think on his days long and straight, and that's what you're going to need this week. Obviously, you're going to find plenty of rough throughout the week. That's just going to be part of the process. But nevertheless, he's a great ball striker, and I think 80 to 1 with the places on offers, just quite tempting. I was half tempted by Leishman again, who are back in the PGA, but he had no excuses to not perform there at the end of the day with the leaderboard that we saw on Sunday with the Open specialist. So I had to reluctantly leave him out. Oosthuizen, not totally enamoured with the price, 50 to 1. It's just okay, but he posted his 5th runner-up finish in a major championship at the PGA last month. It's incredible, really, and maybe he doesn't get the credit he deserves for those kind of efforts. Obviously, we've talked about contention in the previous major being a huge pointer, and although KOL is a bit different because it favoured, old timers and it favoured open specialists, but nevertheless, Bruce Taston was right in the mix. In fact, he was the only one who was pushing Nicholson towards the end of that round. He's kind of become a US Open specialist, finished 7th at Pebble 2 years ago and 3rd at Winged Foot then last year. And he was kind of fighting with Bryson that Sunday too. So he's a lot of experience in the heat of major championship battle at the weekends over this last couple of years. And he really deserves another major, doesn't he? More than plenty of others in the game, even towards the top. Can you really say Justin Thomas deserves another major? Or, that took Dustin Johnson a long time to get his second. But Louis Taston's banging away these runner-up finishes. And as I say, I just don't think he gets enough credit for it. And he's now become an expert at these tough, long major tracks. And, if he can manage to hold a few putts and keep his score going, in particular power putts over the weekend, then he could be right up there again.
I think I'm right in saying that he only held 2 putts over 6 or 7 foot for the whole weekend at Kiowa.
Yeah, that's incredible, and he was still right in the mix. Come the middle of the back nine on Sunday, and there was a couple more. Maybe if the final 4 holes had played like they had done all week without the wind change, it could have been a different finish there with someone posting a score a couple of groups ahead. Yeah,
well, Louis Oosthuizen 50-1, 40-1 with Sky Bet if you want the 11 places, and Adam Scott 80-1. Best price 66s with Sky Bet. I should have mentioned the prices of Ben's 2 we just discussed as well. Tony Finau at 28-1, Victor Hovland the same price. Best prices if you want the Sky Bet 11 places. You can take 22s there, and as Ben says, maybe those are 2 shrewd ones to take the places for, because doubts maybe about their winning potential, but certainly as solid bets coming into here. They look like value each way bets. A couple more, Ben, for you now. Your final 2. Will Zalatoris, and I thought the quotes you included in your preview were pretty telling and pretty persuasive in terms of making him a punting prospect, and Paul Casey as well, both 1 point each way.
Yeah, nothing if not persuasive. Look, Zalatoris is from California. He grew up on these greens. I do think that's a big pointer and a big help. If you look at the 2008 leaderboard, when Tiger won, obviously Tiger's from California, but all over that leaderboard, all the surprise names, and we shouldn't forget there were a lot of surprise names on that leaderboard, which is it's going to be interesting to see if that plays out again. I suspect it won't. But almost all the names you didn't expect to see got really, really strong California form. Even Rocco Mediate went on to win the Fries.com Open a few years later at Cordoval. But everyone up there, Jeff Ogilvy's a winner in California. I think was it DA Points or DJ Trahan. It was one of those 2, and I always get them mixed up. Went on to win in California as well. It's just a really good pointer. And I think if you look back at the last major we had in California, Colin Morikawa, who grew up nearby, was the winner. And if you go back to the year before at Pebble Beach, Gary Woodland, a regular contender, be it at Farmers at Pebble Beach or at Riviera. So I think it's a huge pointer to look at those who do well on the West Coast. It's part of the reason a lot of people fancy Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantley. For me, Will Zalatoris at twice the odds is more compelling. Obviously, he's placed in all 3 majors since he became the player he is. He did play in one in 2018 and didn't do so well, but he's completely transformed since then. He's a big hitter who's a brilliant iron player, and his problem is the putter. Obviously, he's not yet won on the PGA Tour, and that's a negative. I do think you would have probably looked at Morikawa and said, well, he's not really played enough majors. And Matt Wolff, who was a consistent feature of the majors last year, again, just did it straight off the bat. And I think a player like Zalatoris is capable of doing it. I mean, he was second at the Masters, right? You're not supposed to stick around like that if you're new to it. So I do like him a lot. He will need to hit his approach shots better than he did last time, but that was the end of a 4-week run at a course which probably doesn't suit. And Torrey Pines, where he was 7th back in January, it's a brilliant course for him. I've no doubt about that. So hopefully he can continue this wonderful run and maybe even get that first win in spectacular fashion. The other ones at the other end of the scale, Paul Casey. I did consider Oosthuizen for all the reasons Niall pointed out. I think I just drawn by Casey's bigger muscles. He's one of the most powerful players out there when it comes to getting out of rough and things like that. He's a brilliant driver. I think his form now is slightly better than it was in the spring. He's played well all year, but he was very popular at 40 and 33 for the Masters, and he's a little bit bigger this time. And I don't really think there's a reason for that, except that his form at Torrey Pines isn't spectacular, but he's not played it for 4 years. He's in better form now than when last he did. And I think he was 28, so it's a decent look around. And also, again, go back to those 2 majors I talked about as good form guides. Well, he was brilliant at Harding Park. I don't think he did anything wrong there when beaten by Morikawa. And then he went on to Winged Foot, where he shot 76 in round 1 and still finished in 17th. And actually double bogeyed the last, but for which he would have been paying out on each way bets again. He would have finished 8th. So he's become an excellent major golfer. And I don't want to dwell too much on things like perspective, but I do think he has found a way to treat his success now in a more relaxed way. I think it's probably why he's become a winner again in his 40s. He's won 4 tournaments since 2018, having gone quite a long time without one. And I think his perspective is brilliant. And whether that holds through the whole tournament, I'd be somewhat doubtful. But it's exactly the sort of thing that can help him build a platform. And I'd be disappointed if he doesn't play well, because he's got all the attributes for this. So, and I do think he can win. I do. I know some people will think, okay, I'm just playing for 6 or whatever. No, I do think he can win. And seeing a 50-year-old win the USPGA, and it's been a year of veteran winners. Well, yeah, 43-year-old Casey. Yeah, the time is now. I think he can go very close.
The time is now for Paul Casey, certainly playing some incredible stuff and seems to fit. I was looking yesterday doing my own research at who kind of ticks the boxes of being able to hit the ball very far off the tee and able to hit the ball very straight off the tee. And nobody really fits that better than Paul Casey. So fingers crossed he can follow up so many good major performances with a win for you over the weekend. Niall, a couple of big price ones for you just to finish off.
Yeah, I think Brian Harman has been quite popular in the majors this year. He was quite popular at the Masters. And again, at the PGA, didn't perform at the PGA. But again, as I've said, it suited open specialists. I don't read too much into any poor performance there. And it was mainly a bad putting performance that contributed to his finish there. But outside of that, he hasn't been outside the top 18 in his last 6 events. He was 3rd at Sawgrass earlier on in the year and 8th at the Charles Schwab last time out. He led after rounds 1 and 2, or after rounds 2 and 3 of the Iron Hills US Open in 2017, and was 2nd after rounds 1 and 2 of the Masters this year. Eventually finished 12th there. So he's gaining major experience in and around the lead. He's playing great stuff all season, as I say. Not outside the top 18 in those last 6 events, bar the PGA. Is absolutely superb form, gaining strokes in all departments. And if the USGA somehow curtail the likes of Bryson and Koepka employing their bomb and gouge tactics, then Brian Harman might be one of those to capitalise upon that. Along the same lines, Kevin Streetman having another very good year. He obviously sacrifices a fair bit off the tee, but he finished in the top 10 on the PGA, and he was well in the mix there on Sunday. Faded towards the end of the front 9, but nevertheless it was his best major effort in what has been a poor major career really so far, but that was his best, and I wouldn't be surprised if he just kicks on from that. He followed up with top 20s at the Charles Schwab and the Memorial. He loves the West Coast, good experiences on Tawana greens. He's actually a great record at Pebble Beach. He's finished runner-up there and a few other great finishes. He finished 3rd here at Torrey Pines in 2016. Obviously, with a game like Streetman, I think he will need to scramble very well, and from inside 100 yards in the last 50 rounds, he ranks 3rd in the field. He's generally really consistent approaching the greens from anything inside 200 yards. So, Mediate was an example of, obviously the game has really changed since 2008, but Mediate went toe-to-toe with Tiger, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a few of these guys up towards the top of the leaderboard on Sunday, and really Harman and Streetman are those informed guys with that type of game, and both sitting at triple figures, so I'm happy to take it.
Yeah, 2 big price there for Niall. They were 125 when you put them up. Prices now, still 125 is about for Harman, and Streelman 150 is a bit, but you're not getting that move at 8 places. You can get 125 for Streelman, 11 places, which is definitely the way to play it. That's with Sky Bet would be the way to go for Streelman. We're now just going to run through some of the likely contenders that we haven't touched upon yet. And Ben, in your column, you wrote that you were kind of choosing between Bryson, who we've already covered, Justin Thomas, who we've covered because Niall put him up, and Brooks Koepka, who's second in the betting, or second on the oddschecker grids at 18-1 at the moment.
Yeah, and Koepka would have been firmly third in that group. It was more a case of I was happy to basically overlook everybody else shorter than 20-1, but Koepka was the one where I kept looking at. I do think his preparation last week at the Palmetto Championship was quite good. He only played 2 rounds, and in the heat of South Carolina at this time of year, I don't think that's a bad thing. And statistically, the only reason he wasn't there for the weekend is that he didn't make a putt. When he said afterwards, "I'm really pleased with where my game is," and all that, I actually believe him. I know Koepka is someone to put a positive message across regardless, but I do think he's probably on the right track. That being said, there is a little niggle about how he's been playing under pressure in majors, which sounds silly, but
is that just variance? Is that just because no one can continue, converting the way that he has done?
I would agree with that in terms of like why he hasn't won another. I don't think it necessarily excuses the way he failed to push Nicholson. He did not apply any pressure. He took the lead after the first hole at Kiel Island. And then after that, he was gone after 4 or 5 holes, and that amazed me. I can accept him finishing second or third, but the way in which he did was disappointing. And I think it's a bit like Matt Wallace on the European Tour. He came out and it's obviously at different levels. He won 4 times or whatever it was in 18 months. And I think he built an image for himself, which is impossible to keep up. And then when things start to go wrong, it almost adds to the pressure of why haven't you won again? Like we all thought you would, this is what you do. You're a winner. And all of a sudden you can't do it. Why not? Whereas anybody else, you say, well, yet again, Brooks Koepka played well at a major, and it should be a positive. But for him, it feels like it's just viewed slightly differently. Probably gone overboard in my analysis of him, but I do respect his chance. I think he's very hard to predict. He's very much boom or bust. I think he's got 6 missed cuts and 2 seconds and a win in the last 6 months. So if he's around for the weekend, then watch out. But he wouldn't be one I could be confident in selecting. That said, I preferred him to Schauffele. I think he's a little bit underpriced. And the other one I did like at sub 25-1. Sorry to steal the next name, but I suspect you were going to ask about Patrick Cantley at some stage. And I did think Cantley is kind of the opposite of Rahm. Like he won ultimately, and he still had to beat Colin Morikawa. And although he had a bit of fortune, he got the job done, and that'd be an enormous boost to his confidence. And actually, I don't think, he's gone off shorter for other majors than 25s. I didn't think he'd really been treated like he deserved to be treated in some respects. The slight issue for me is that he's not been great in majors lately. And when you look at his Torrey Pines form, it's poor. So there are a couple of negatives, but I'd rather back Cantley than Schauffele. And I do sort of group them together. They're quite hard to separate usually.
Cantley, Schauffele, and Brooks covered there from Ben. So let's now talk about Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy. DJ 18-1 best price, Rory 20-1. And from my untrained eye, it feels like there's quite a bit going for DJ, kind of sneakily. You look at him in terms of player profile, another one who hits the ball very far and pretty straight when he's playing well. Very, very good out of rough for probably the same reasons as Bryson in terms of pure power. And not a bad little prep run after a poor, well, by his standards, a poor run of form last weekend where he came out and shot a 65 and a 68 before falling away over the weekend.
Yeah, well, it was disappointing over the weekend, but I wouldn't read too much into it. It certainly wouldn't put me off a golfer whenever you're going into a major championship. But as Ben mentioned earlier on, he won in Saudi Arabia at the start of the year. It was a drop in class, but he hasn't really threatened since. And a miscut at the Masters and a miscut at the PGA is not the preparation that you want before going into this US Open. Even though you're getting a bigger price about DJ than what you were a couple of months ago, around the 8 or 9-1 mark, you can get 14-1. It's just not quite big enough. And as I mentioned earlier on with Justin Thomas, you kind of let the opportunities come to you with some of these golfers, and the price about Dustin probably isn't big enough yet. 14-1 to win this US Open, which is going to be extremely tough.
It's a bit of 18-1's best price, and I guess you could argue that he'd be a win-only bet, wouldn't you? Given his current form.
Yeah, possibly, but there's enough negatives surrounding him and enough positives surrounding, a handful of others around the same price that, I think he's easily overlooked. But Ben had mentioned Brooks there. Obviously we've covered him, but there's a slight worry. I can't believe him saying that as well. Slight worry around the not closing the major championships. It was probably enough just to make me swerve him, despite 14 top 10s and 25 majors or whatever. You're obviously getting huge profit if you back him, but it was enough to make me swerve him. McIlroy, I considered him this week, not for very long, but the price is certainly interesting. And a few years ago, I was a big advocate of if McIlroy heads towards 20-1 for any major, he just must be back. He'll win more than 1 in 20, even at this stage in his career. He's got decent form around Torrey Pines as well. He's played quite well around here. But again, there was just a few more positives around other guys in the market. Obviously, Ben mentioned Cantley there. He's another informed golfer, always slightly overrated by the market for me. The fact that he comes in here around the 25-1 mark after winning is, kind of a vindication of that, really. That he's gone off shorter before, but now he comes in after a win, and he's still at a somewhat of a backable price that I think he's been underpriced in majors and other tournaments before. I think we've covered. Schauffele was the one for me up there towards the top that was just completely unbackable. I don't give stuff for his chances. The 18-1 for him is absolutely ludicrous. Obviously he's got a great major record, and if you're talking about each way bets and making a small percentage of profit backing guys like that, that's not for me. I'm trying to find a winner at the end of the day, and the price just doesn't. He can win on Sunday, and we can all sit back and go happy enough not to have backed that 18-1. We can let it slide. So obviously he has shown frailties in the lead. This last couple of years, it's been 2.5 years since his last win as well, and he's let a few chances slip through his fingers. So yeah, he's another guy with a few negatives towards the top of the market, and all I can advise people to back Jon Rahm and sit back and enjoy the week. Simple as that.
I'm just going to ask you one more player, because I cannot believe we are this far into this preview and we haven't mentioned Jordan Spieth's name once at the moment. He sits in the market at 20-1. I mean, there are obvious concerns around course fit and things like that. Did he ever cross your mind to back him again for another major here?
Yeah, he crossed my mind every week that he plays.
You'll be having a few quid on the exchange, won't you, on Thursday morning?
I'll happily admit to doing that sometimes, but I actually won't this week. I was kicking myself a few weeks ago when I didn't preview the event that he got into the lead in, and I was thinking about just throwing throw away a few quid on the machine that week, and I didn't. But he didn't win in the end. But again, I think his price was just a bit short for me. It could play out that way, that the game from inside 100 yards could prove to be really important this week. We don't know yet. But if the rough is completely unplayable or somewhat unplayable, like you can't just reach the greens, or it's that difficult to control the ball out of the Kikuya that you're going to miss the greens, then yeah, Jordan Spieth is going to be one of those guys to beat. And there's not many negatives surrounding his form all year, so of course he's a contender, just not as big a price as I would like him to be.
Unless you've got something to say, there are three more players we'll discuss, Ben, before we move on. Colin Morikawa has obvious claims, so solid. Patrick Reed, somebody who likes the South Course and has form in the Farmers. I just want to ask as well about Tyrrell Hatton, who comes into this weekend seemingly with a game that could go well on course and coming into it in pretty good form as well. Yeah,
he hit it really, really well last week. Tee to green, he was near flawless. He could so easily have won that tournament, despite never really looking like he could win the tournament. Yeah. He just hit the ball so well. Now, can he find a putting stroke in time for this week? Will the Poana greens frustrate him even more? Yeah, it would be a slight concern for me. He's also one of there are a few of them, certainly Europeans in particular, who haven't had a look at the course, which is a bit of a negative. But I think if you were at the start of the year when he was winning in Abu Dhabi, and that was what, his third win in 12 months or whatever, you'd have been saying, well, 50-1 for any of the majors is worth a second look. But I would be more inclined to hold fire, and if you're encouraged by what you saw last week, then maybe the Open Championship, given his form on links courses. I also, and we'll see if this plays out, I don't think it was and I touched upon this earlier, I don't think playing 4 rounds at the Palmetto was the best way to prepare. Different strokes for different folks and stuff. And, some players simply must play the week before, else they feel like they've not prepared properly. I would say you'd been better off spending the weekend at Torrey Pines, especially when you've not spent much time there. I don't know as he's ever played the course. Enough negatives for me, but he's one of the best players in the world on his best form, isn't he? And a bit like Webb Simpson, like they're quite easy to forget about when we focus on the elite players and potentially a little bit more power. And yet you'll still expect to see Webb finish 20th, and it'll probably be the same with Tyrrell Hatton. I suspect he'll make the cut and do okay, but I don't think he's the winner.
Let's move on then to some of the sub-markets. And last time we did this for the USPGA, Ben, you tipped up a winner, which was Phil Nicholson, top former winner.
It's the worst 28-1 winner you've ever heard, isn't it? He had to win the tournament to land the bet. So you might as well have backed him outright at 200. It's just the worst 28-1 winner.
I was thinking of you when I was watching the exchange market, and it was like when it was flip-flopped after that first hole, I was thinking this is basically just the same market as the top four winner market now, which is amazing.
And do you know what? It's an indication of how well this year has gone for me. Like this is not self-deprecation or whatever. All of us feel hard done by when things don't go our way. But when I put him up in that market because I thought a lot of those former champions would play poorly. Almost every former champion played brilliantly, and he still won it. So that's luck on my part. So hopefully we'll have some more this week, but I feel like I might have used it all up.
What have you got for us this weekend?
I think the best bet, honestly, by quite a long way, but it's odds on, is to Dutch Adam Scott and Mark Leishman in the top Aussie market. You get 10 to 11. They've got Cameron Smith to beat. That Matt Jones deserves respect. I actually put him up for the PGA, but this is a completely different test. I don't think he'll take to it. And you got Brad Kennedy, Wade Ormsby, and Steve Allen are the other 3 Australians. They will all miss the cut, surely. You've got Cameron Smith to beat. Cameron Smith's form has gone off. He was poor at the PGA and poor last time. He's got a sneaky good record on the South course, but he does give up distance to Scott and Leishman, but I know of the 3, he's the one who's had the better year. And I don't underestimate, he nearly won the US Open at Chambers Bay. He's nearly won the Masters. He's a brilliant player. I have a lot of time for him, but if you can have Leishman and Scott together in what I think is a 3-way market, and they're the 2 with a real Torrey Pines form, Adam Scott runner-up, Mark Leishman a winner here. I think that's by some distance the best specials bet. There are a couple of others of interest. I think Taylor Pendrith at 13 to 2 in a 4-way top Canadian is interesting. Corey Connors 8 to 13, probably the winner. But the other 2, Mackenzie Hughes and Adam Hadwin, I can easily oppose. And the key with Taylor Pendrith is he is probably one of the top 5 or 6 in terms of distance off the tee in this field. He's certainly got 20 yards on all of his Canadian compatriots. So 13 to 2, 4-horse race. I like Edoardo Molinari, top Italian. He's got his brother and Guido Migliozzi to beat. He's the outsider of 3. And I'm trying to find a way, someone somewhere who is sharp has put up Chan Kim in the side markets because he's been cut across the board. Chan Kim is a huge hitting American who's been trying to find a path to the PGA Tour via the Japan Golf Tour, where he's a 5-time winner. 4 of those wins in very difficult conditions. Crucially, he hits it miles. Again, up there with Pendrith and not far behind the likes of DeChambeau. In terms of driving distance, he's got good major form. He's only played in 8 of them. He was 11th in the Open in 2017 as a qualifier, and he was 27th in the USPGA a couple of weeks ago. That's good form, 27th place in a world-class field. He won his qualifier 2 weeks ago for this. Justin Sir was back in 3rd. It was a decent qualifier, and he dusted them. And I think he can play well, but how do you side with a player like that? You can have 1,000 on the exchanges. Well, not only is he not going to win, he's probably not going to get you into a position where you can really make something of that. If you back him each way with 11 places, you're actually really probably playing for 3 places. Like he's not finishing the top 5, So it's all these conundrums. I liked him for the top 20. I think maybe I have to accept that he was 25s, he's now 12s, and the boat has left the harbour.
Guy that go 5 places, top American, 250 to 1.
Yeah, the problem is I like loads of other Americans. So again, I could see him being one of the top 10 Americans. Maybe I'll ask them to do a price on that for me. But maybe you just accept that you can't get a big price win out of him, and he might be 3 to 1 to win his 3-ball. And if he wins that Thursday and Friday, then he's done the job for us, hasn't he? So he's just a name to keep in mind, Chan Kim, because he's a massive hitter with loads of talent. I think he's good enough to really get to the PGA Tour, but it's a difficult journey when you're playing out in Japan. So we'll see how he does.
Chan Kim there for Ben. Also, Eduardo Molinari 5-2, top Italian, and Taylor Pendrith 13-2 with Sky Bet for top Canadian. Niall?
Yeah, just a couple that I like. One of them would be, it's risky at the end of the day. It's only a second major, but Marcus Armitage at 5-1, top 40, I think is worth the risk. Obviously won the Porsche European Open a week or two ago there, and the scenes were absolutely unbelievable. It was great to see. And he's riding the crest of a wave. He was 8th in Himmerland and 4th in Austria earlier on in the year. He's playing great golf all year. He has a 6th place at Leopard Creek, on a notoriously tough course in South Africa. And yes, he's very inexperienced in major championships, obviously inexperienced around this track too. But, you're talking, Marcus Armitage at the top of his game. What score's going to need to get into the top 40 here? God knows, 10 over will probably certainly be in the top 40. Is Marcus Armitage capable of shooting 10 over? Yeah, of course he is. Even on, only a second major championship, but he's 5-1 out there for the top 40. I just think, given the way he's playing and the crest of a wave that he's riding, it's worth chancing.
Can I add a good positive for you there now? Sorry to interrupt, but I do think Green Eagle, which is the longest course in the European Tour, is actually it's a really good event to have won. And when Jordan Smith won it in 2017, his next appearance was in the USPGA and he finished 8th or 7th. So, I think it's an interesting shout.
Yeah, that's a good positive. The other bet I was just looking at was Bernd Wiesberger, 60-1 out there for top European. Now, I know I'm back in Rahm and I consider him a strong favourite. It'd be tough to beat, but nevertheless, he's 52 in the world. He's actually the 14th ranked European in the world, and he's 16th in the betting. There's not a huge difference in that, but you're getting 4 places. And he was very impressive winning a couple of starts ago. A couple of years ago when he was winning, he won the Rolex or 1 or 2 Rolex events in the European Tour. I was looking to him to be a possible major champion, and I think the COVID break didn't really help his chances and might have hindered someone who was maybe just beginning to realise his full potential. And then I went a couple of starts ago. He was so impressive there a couple of weeks ago. If there's ever a bomb and gouger, from the European Tour that could play well around Torrey Pines, then it just might be Bernd Wiesberger, and you're getting 60-1 just for the top European. So yeah, I thought he was interesting.
Interesting stuff. Definitely some value in those sub-markets. Thank you very much to both Ben and Niall for joining us on the preview today. Make sure you check out their previews and their columns. Niall's on the oddschecker app and website, and Ben's over on Sporting Life. Do download the oddschecker app for the best prices, best place terms, bookie offers, free bets, and of course the tipsters as well. Make sure you check out our sponsors Sky Bet's offer for the US Open, paying 11 places before the first ball is hit. This offer applies to each way bets only, of course. A fifth the odds. Dead heat rules do apply. Further T's and C's are available to find on the site. 18 plus only. You can visit begambleaware.org for all responsible gambling details. Thank you very much to you guys. Some brilliant insight there. Really excited about the weekend's golf. Good to see a proper test being laid on. Hopefully we'll get a couple of winners up. So do enjoy the golf and please gamble responsibly.